Keep on rocking you.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. I am feeling this. I shared it to my Facebook if you need a quick link. Oh, yeah. I tell you what, I am feeling that smooth jazz. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Nothing Explained. I am Samson, your host. Today on the podcast, as usual, I will be explaining nothing. I will have the help of Ryan Fu.
What's up?
And actually, today, I think we might set the bar a new high bar for not explaining anything, given the fact that...
Oh, my God. My phone.
The phone will be ringing.
Blame Quinn. Quinn Marchman.
Quinn!
No, it's my fault.
That's all right.
What are we not explaining, Samson?
Well, today I went to Beer Fest last night, so I figured I'd just talk about beer. But given that you don't drink anymore, I think we're going to do a really good job of explaining nothing.
Yeah. I'm the perfect guest to not explain anything about beer.
So this is Nothing Explained. Over the course of the next hour, I will explain absolutely nothing. And as a consequence of that, nothing I say has any real consequence or value. I don't give legal advice, medical advice, or... What's the other one I'm missing?
I don't know. Philosophical spiritual advice? You do give spiritual advice.
No, well,
you give your opinion.
Said,
you don't give
medical,
what is legally defined as advice.
Yeah, medical, legal, or... well, there's another big one. That's weird.
That's okay.
But anyway, advice is a legal term, and by giving advice, you are subjecting yourself to potential lawsuits.
Don't
because
do that.
If you give bad advice and someone goes out and does it,
it's
and
your
then they
fault.
screw up, it is your fault. So
it is.
I make recommendations, and you can believe me or not. In fact, it's probably a good idea not to. Believe only yourself. Believe in only yourself.
Believe nothing. Nothing.
Explain nothing, believe nothing. That is my whole creed. All right, so I wanted to touch on the Vegas thing a little bit because you did a live feed this week.
Oh, that did happen.
And I thought that was really good. I'm glad that you did that. And it was also very interesting to see that you definitely were kind of inundated with people who were very concerned about the situation. And not like, I'm concerned that people are shooting up the place, but I'm concerned that what's going on out there isn't what we're being told is going on out there.
A lot of people. I mean, I'm talking like 20 people on my news feed, 20 separate people who wouldn't normally share conspiracy stuff. We're like, this is totally a scam. Don't believe anything they're telling you.
Yeah, and I got a bit of the same thing. A Facebook person was like, hey, you're like deep in the conspiracy stuff, right? Like, what do you think? Right. And I heard someone talking around the office. It said, I walked past an office and the guy's like, I don't know, man. This just doesn't really seem to add up to me. And I was like, whoa, all right. Interesting. But I will say on that note, it is looking pretty funny. I've seen a bunch of videos of guys who are like, I'm normally debunking stuff and I can't debunk this potential for multiple shooters thing because the audio, there's thousands of videos and all of them have audio, like it sounds like a gun in the distance and then the sound of a gun in the foreground. Yeah. Like there's definitely something going on there. Multiple machine guns.
I've also been like observing all that stuff, and for any of you that didn't see my live video, if it's okay if I recap really quickly, I tried to make it a point that whatever media we're consuming, whether it's conspiracy media or independent media or mainstream media, we need to be weary of, first off, just not accepting it at face value.
Yeah, exactly.
Really taking the time to do your own research and form your own opinion about it because, A, things continue to evolve, right? Most people who heard the mainstream story about the Las Vegas shooting, it's probably long gone already, right, in their mind. And
yeah, they've moved on.
They've moved on, right. But similarly, there are now, I think, still a lot of people who saw little conspiracy clips about stuff or like certain images that were shared, and they've probably moved on too. So some of the most interesting and to me the most vital parts of conspiracy networks around the internet is that they continue to do the digging, right? They continue to do the critical research. Got to kill that fly. That fly needs to die. Oh, you got it. It's still alive though.
Yeah, I didn't kill it. No, I can't kill flies with my breath. Not yet, anyway.
I don't know what's real, and none of us really do. But being critical and continuing to look at the story is always a really important thing, I think.
Yeah, and that's I wanted to touch on that because that is like the central theme. I get caught up easily in like what is maybe or isn't going on, but I did want, more importantly, to like say that like a big part of Nothing Explained in the podcast is this: don't believe anything really.
Right.
I mean, like you can't. If you weren't there and you didn't see it yourself and you didn't do anything, don't get too caught up. And it is important that you express interest in these subjects and that the public moves forward in discovering what the truth is.
Right.
But definitely don't believe the mainstream narrative and don't believe, and with the same, I would say equal, of course,
Yes.
the vast majority of people out there are going to be like, well, you can trust the mainstream media to a bigger extent than you can random shit on the internet. And you can trust the mainstream media to give you a very sanitized view of everything because one, it's not in their best interest to be very honest, because if they were being very honest, you'd know a lot more about the money working behind the scenes. And, in a perfectly good example, you can't trash talk pharmaceuticals because that the vast majority of revenue stream for TV comes from pharmaceuticals. So you're never going to have an equal and uneven, unbiased debate on pharmaceuticals in the mainstream media.
Or anywhere that there's advertising.
And this kind of event that happened in Vegas, you're not really going to get a positive narrative because the government definitely doesn't want any sort of anti-government sentiment, right? Like the lone gunman wacko is really the only narrative you can really push on television because everything else is something that might go viral. You definitely don't want to popularize the idea of some sort of, you don't want a popularist uprising, and you definitely don't want people like running out into the street with guns because of some anti-gun narratives. And the only way to really avoid that is just to be like, it was just one guy, he was crazy.
Yeah.
You don't want to open up to any potential for teamwork or like a popular narrative that is anti-government.
I think it's more than anything too when it comes to the mainstream media. I think it's worth noting that it's not like a bunch of independent journalists all chose to happen to use the same words. They're all reading an Associated Press briefing.
Yeah.
That's really important to know. That I love different people. I know various people who work for the media. They're wonderful people. Some who are like local investigators. They do great work sometimes. Like some of the best investigative work I've ever seen sometimes has been on local news. But also the things that they say, oh, look at that cute dog. This is Hita Sol, everyone. She's joining us for the podcast. She's also explaining nothing. She'll do a great job. That this narrative is a printed piece of paper more than anything. And so not to believe that it's any more than one perspective.
Yeah, it's very homogenous. And what we're any healthy system is going to have a lot of wild, large viewpoints. Yeah. And in this case, we do not see that. So there are some interesting things. We'll close up real quick with some interesting stuff that would be interesting to pay attention to. There was an interview this week with the older brother of the shooter, and he appeared to almost drop the ball that he was an arms dealer. He said he was just half in conversation. He's like, well, he was in arms, and then he caught himself, and he's like, oh, I was about to say something disparaging about the military. I'll just leave that alone. That was his like backing up. But what would you say if you started to say he was in arms? Where does that go besides arms dealer? Which would explain a lot of guns. It would also explain, like, if he does have post-military operation, he had a lot of money that would be a potential revenue stream. And the fact that why he would appear to have been doing nothing but gambling for the last 5 or 10 years. So
also, it's something very easy to do legally here in the United States of America, which is to buy and sell weapons. Yeah. Now, which kinds of weapons, but ultimately selling somebody with a weapon, even without a receipt, is a totally legal thing to do. Even if they don't have a license, they don't have a background check, no need anything like that. Meet up in a parking lot, sell somebody a gun, no problem. Yep. Yeah, so that is 100% legal. Yep. Yeah.
And so if you're listening to gun firing, there was clearly more rounds available in those guns than you can get in any clip available on the market anywhere in the world. So that suggests belt-fed machine gun. Those kinds of things are being talked about. We're probably never going to see any videos of him walking to and from his room, even though Las Vegas is one of the most surveilled places in the entire world. There's definitely some funny stuff, and I think that the public is like a bit more aware of it this time. So this is gonna be very interesting. It could be interesting if something breaks and everyone's like, wait, what? Because I am waiting for that moment. I fully expect that moment in the next 4 or 5 months of like a big, wait, what? Moment, because we're due.
Well, I also am personally in my own conspiratorial mind, I'm less interested in who caused what or who planned what or who was behind what, and more interested in how folks use these kinds of terrible and tragic events where people die to their advantage.
Yeah. And actually, that is a really good point. The CEO of Mandalay Bay sold a bunch of stock in the month prior, like a bunch, $10 million worth of stock. He is on a committee at the Department of Homeland Security, which deals with security infrastructure like metal detectors and things like that. And if this kind of thing would result in some sort of legislation, which is probably already written, that demands that certain institutions up their game on security infrastructure, he is going to directly profit from that greatly. So it does raise eyebrows.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of money to be made on any giant event that gets any kind of media sensation because it's always going to affect policy.
Yeah, any publicity is good publicity. So, all right. Well, anyway, let's get into beer, huh?
Alcohol.
So I went to Beer Fest last night, the largest beer gathering in the United States.
It is?
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh, Colorado loves its beer.
Don't we?
I
I was a beer aficionado pretty early on in my drinking career. I was the person who would like go. I had a really big, when I turned 21, I had a really big liquor store right around the corner from my house. And so I'd be like, I just methodically worked through every beer in the cooler. And I went to all the breweries everywhere I could go and tried all the beers. And I tried everything up until 5 or 6 years into the beer revolution of Colorado, craft beer revolution. And suddenly, there's too much beer to try. And I've kind of, I drink a lot more plain beer now than I ever used to. So,
what's your favorite beer, Samson?
Oh, that's a tough call. Let's see. 90 Shilling from Odell in Fort Collins was on the list for quite a while.
I feel like that is a stock favorite beer response.
Yeah, it's a good. I like the Scotch ales, or kind of like medium browns, a little bit sweet. Java Porter at the Mountain Sun's probably one of my all-time favorites. If I go to the Mountain Sun and it's on nitro, I will always get it. What else? No, definitely did not get that fly.
I didn't.
Maybe next time.
No.
Okay, so anyway, beer is the oldest and most popular alcoholic beverage in the world. It is the third most conserved beverage behind water and ice and tea.
Wow.
So, yeah, pretty...
Wait, tea? There's more tea consumed than beer?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Good.
Definitely probably not in the United States.
Oh, okay.
That's the Asian statistic coming in.
Probably.
But beer itself is a fermented tea.
Yeah.
And the tea is made from cereal grains which have been malted. And so your cereal grains would be like wheat, barley, and barley's the big one, corn, rice. And malting is the process of germinating the seed. So, you have a dry seed, you get it wet, and it starts to crack open, and the little guy called the cotyledon starts to grow. And there's a bunch of enzymatic processes in there that start turning all of this complicated plant matter in the little seed. And I forget what that's called, but your seed is basically just a food package for the little plant you're starting to grow.
Yeah.
And so all these enzymatic processes start turning your plant matter into sugars. And so then you stop that by letting it all dry out. And then you roast it to some degree, and that's where the color in the beer comes. Your light is not very roasted, and your dark beers are extremely roasted.
Right.
And then you ferment that. And let's see. So that malting process and the roasting is a caramelization. And the interesting thing about that is that is like the chaining together of more sugars, like making a longer and longer molecule. And the longer that molecule is, the more color you have, and the less digestible it is by the yeast. So a darker beer is going to be sweeter depending on how you do it, but for the most part. Yeah, so that's going to leave behind, and it also dramatically changes the flavor profile. So that caramelization is, get you all kinds of molecules in there that are adding all kinds of crazy things to the flavor. So, and the interesting thing about caramelization, which is an oxidation of sugar, which is like kind of your body is an enzymatic process of burning fuel. So it's cracking those molecules, and the energy from those bonds is then what's being used to fuel your body. And but caramelization is like poorly understood, which is a really interesting thing to think about.
What is caramelization?
Well, it's the process of you're basically like boiling the water off, and then the lack of water in there and the higher temperatures allow for the carbon, because all your fuels and sugars and stuff, those are all carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, CHOs, and you get longer and more CHO things bonded together. And but yeah, like I did quite a bit of reading this morning, and I was like, this is going to be hard to talk about. I mean, not caramelization in specific.
chemistry.
I'm definitely not going to get super deep into it. One, because I don't understand it at that level. And two, what's the point? Like, if I was doing a chemistry podcast, I'm sure I could talk about caramelization for hours and not barely scratch the subject. But it is very interesting that this thing that we do a lot of, caramelizing, you know.
We don't understand very well.
Yeah, we don't understand it very well. So, and that was something I did not know until this morning.
Well, now we all know it. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. So sugar is a carbon molecule and it burns, which is oxidizing, releasing energy, just like fuel. Some of the big carbon molecules are glucose, fructose, sucrose, and lactose. And lactose is a milk sugar, which is lactate, you know, like, and that's what you get, like a milk stout. That would be because it has a lactose added into it as part of the fermentation process. So, random fact there. And let's see, I said that. So then we've malted our beer and we've roasted it. And that's, so you take that stuff and you run your water, you're going to do a little cooking process. And that water that comes off of that cooking process is called the wort. So that's basically hot tea made from your grain. And then you ferment that. And fermenting is a biological process where microorganisms, mostly yeast, will eat that sugar. And what they're doing is they're breaking up that sugar, which is a longer carbon, oxygen, hydrogen chain molecule, and they're breaking it down into smaller pieces. And those smaller pieces are alcohol and then CO2. And so that's why the fermentation process bubbles, because it's eating that molecule and it's using the energy that's coming off of the breaking of that bond for its own process to reproduce and get bigger. And the byproducts of that, it's pooping out alcohol, basically.
Yeah. So I've got a question.
We're getting drunk on yeast poop.
Yeah, that's right. So in kombucha, you've got like a SCOBY, right? Do you have a similar kind of, because that like a chain of yeast that are doing that in the process with the wort?
Yeah, and my understanding of kombucha is that it's a two-step process. So there's a fermentation that's creating alcohol, and then the actual, what did you call it, the SCOBY?
Yeah, it's microbiome.
Yeah, that's a it's a mushroom, mycological. I don't know, mycelium.
Mitochondria? No. Mycological.
Anyway, it is a fungi. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And it's eating the alcohol and it's putting out some other stuff. So that's why you have a fermentation process, but you're not getting an alcoholic beverage. And there's some alcohol left over. As we know, Lindsay Lohan tried to use that as an excuse in court for driving drunk.
That she had too much kombucha?
Yeah. And then that's what resulted in kind of a review of the entire kombucha industry, which then resulted in a couple of batches and processes that were, especially at GT's, which is one of the bigger kombucha things.
Yeah.
So they found a couple that were like varying just a little bit too much, but still like practically none. But if you go into like Whole Foods, they have a license to sell the black bottle kombucha, which has a slightly higher alcohol content, and they will card you at the store. But that all started with Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah, that's a throwback back to what we were saying earlier with Vegas too, that any large media incident can totally change policy. It's strange that we talk about like writing letters to our congressmen when really the way to change policy is just have a celebrity fuck it up.
The celebrity fuck up lobby.
There you go. Oh my God. And you just put money into having celebrities purposefully make big roughs in certain industries to change policy.
Oh man.
It's actually really smart.
So we need a celebrity to spill a bunch of oil somewhere.
Right, exactly.
So we have a real entity to blame rather than a large corporation.
There you go.
Oh man. Okay, so yeast. It makes alcohol and carbon dioxide. It's getting at your bubbles. And different yeasts produce a different alcohol content and different kinds of flavors. And the vast majority of breweries have I don't know, it's not patented, but they have their own specific yeast. Yeah, you culture your own yeast.
Yeah.
And a lot of your, that's where your kind of like signature brewery flavor, that's where a lot of that's coming from.
Gotcha.
Other than like the taste style of your brewmaster.
So what happens to your yeast? Does the yeast collect on the wort like the SCOBY does in kombucha? Is it like a top layer, or does it just sort of sit into the drink? Like, how do you save the yeast for your next batch?
So you would take a little bit of it. You'd be throwing out, because it's growing. So you started with like a cup and you end up with like a gallon, basically. So
a gallon.
You throw out most of that and start over with your new cup.
Yeah.
And there's very specific processes of how they're like culturing yeast and stuff, and probably depending on the brewery, depends on like, how that's being passed down. And you might even be like, you have a separate kind of like place where you're growing the yeast and you're not taking it back out of the beer. But most simple operations would be taking a little bit of the yeast out of the beer and adding it to the next batch for the culture.
So you could have like a mother plant of yeast.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Was there something else I was going to add in there? So you have to have different yeasts for different alcohol content, because some yeast it's basically selectively bred.
Yeah. So it's how big the yeast stomach are to poop out as much alcohol as they can.
Yeah, so some of it can handle more and more alcohol. Essentially, it can swim in a cesspool of its own poop.
It's not technically poop. It's just the byproduct of what. I mean, is it technically poop? Hard to describe.
I mean, what's the definition of poop?
It is taking something in.
It's its own waste. So
interesting.
yeah,
And it can't eat it. It can't eat the alcohol or do anything with it.
nope.
Interesting.
Yep.
Very interesting.
So then the yeast that produces higher alcohol content, that would be most of that's called champagne yeast, and that's going to yield you something like 12 to 18, somewhere in there, which is, your beer is rarely going to get over 10. And then if you want to get up into the high stuff, you've got to have like a second fermentation process with a new yeast, or there's a couple of ways around that. But
What about hard alcohol? Does that use yeast? I know we're talking about beer, but I'm just curious.
yeah, so that is basically the same process. Hard alcohol is essentially not, some of it's kind of a beer, post beer, that's, I think, like brandy is wine that is then distilled.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of that is like an unflavored tea, basically. So you could start with like vodka is most often going to be potato.
Yeah.
And then it's for that, the potato sugars are fermented, and then you are taking that and then boiling water off. So it's leaving the alcohol behind so that you get higher and higher alcohol content.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And that's how you would get something up to 100% alcohol. Or if you were going to make fuel for burning in your car and you wanted something that was 100%, you'd need like a very specific distillation column.
Right.
So one of the interesting things about beer is that there's this class of beers called sour beers. And a sour beer would basically be a beer that you ruined because new processes, new abilities, the scientific advancements of the human race, the big one being stainless steel, cooking pots and stuff that you can then sanitize to a very reliable degree. And that's going to kill off anything in the batch that you don't want there is all going to die. And then you add the yeast. So the only thing that's alive in there is the yeast. And the yeast can take over the culture, and any sort of bacteria, anything from the air that got in there doesn't have time to have any sort of real effect on the batch by the time the yeast is already done with it. So, but a sour beer is the opposite of that, where you're letting native bacteria and stuff in the area eat and grow and stuff, and it creates this like very sour taste to the beer. And that would have been very normal back in the day before we had all this ability to sanitize and sterilize our equipment. So pretty much every beer back in the day would be a sour beer.
Yeah. So the sanitizing though it's not for health reasons.
No.
It's just for taste.
Yeah, because the alcohol makes
Kills
it sanitary.
anything. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And I don't know to what percentage something becomes sterile with alcohol, but yeah, there's no real danger in what's in your batch as long as there's a decent amount of alcohol.
Yeah, it kills most of it kills like dysentery and like the scary stuff.
Oh yeah, completely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that what was once like a normal product of beer has now been taken out of the beer in order to have a very pure kind of beer.
And now it's its own market.
Yeah, and now the old style, what was beer normal, is now a specialty recipe, basically inside of the world of beer.
Yeah.
So Ewan asked about where the yeast is and what the yeast is. So this takes us into ales versus lagers.
Okay.
So an ale would have been basically the original beer because no refrigeration was really involved, because there wasn't any refrigeration back in the day. And now the new school is the lager. And like ales have come back in American brewing because it's a little bit easier of a process and it takes a lot less time. So, but now with refrigeration and stuff, that's what brought in the lagers. And so in a lager, it's cold and the yeast sinks to the bottom. And I have to make sure that's right. And anyway, ale is a warm temperature fermentation, and it's the opposite. But I'm actually pretty sure that the yeast sinks in an ale and floats in a lager. But all the big beers you can think of, the original like Coors and Bud and all of those and Pilsners, all the Czech beers, all your Mexican beers, those are all lagers. And they're always like lighter in color, flavored with more of like a...
Do they have lower alcohol content too?
Typically, I think that a lot of that too is fermentation time to get the stuff out the door. You know, get the
Capitalism.
yeah, get that beer out there.
Yeah. Get that dollar.
Yeah. So, yeah, and if you go to a brew store and stuff, you can pick which kind of you want, and there's like a school of beer that is like using the opposite yeast, so you can lager ale yeast or you can ale lager yeast. Like, you know, anything you can possibly imagine, basically happens.
I thought of something while you were saying that. I don't know if you've heard this fact, but I worked for Beer Flights over at DIA for a while, which was that's a cute and punny name, and you'd get like a flight of different local beers when you'd come to Denver. Like, ooh, what are the? Because you know, craft brewing. Anyway. And I did trivia, so I did a bunch of beer research one day, and well, for like a week. And one of the cool things that I found out about, I don't know if you know this is a fact when we were talking about the sanitization of beer, that it's argued that human beings didn't have civilization until we had beer. And no one even knew that, because large human civilizations would start on rivers, right? Of course, because like the number one thing you need to be close to for many people to live in a small area is water, right? But as soon as there were mass quantities of people drinking water and probably using it for other means, it became sanitation issue. Like you get like dysentery and cholera and all the other kinds of waterborne bacteria that easily kill giant swaths, right? And that's what they think killed most of the civilizations that came together. But at the advent of beer becoming very popular, they think that a lot of people who didn't die of that were because they consumed beer so much that it killed the alcohol and various fermentation killed a lot of the dangerous bacteria and whatnot. And also, it was common to heat up the water to make stuff for beer. So it would also
a little bit of killing there.
Yeah,
that makes sense. And I wonder about the age of beer is assumed to be, what was that, 9,000 BC? I wrote that down over here somewhere.
Yeah. Well, whatever it was, it's argued that beer might have saved human civilization and advanced us to where we are now.
And I wonder if it was really beer, but that is totally, I think, a very safe assumption with
Could have been anything that
mead,
was
wine,
fermented.
beer.
Yeah, and even
grog.
like fermented food, they probably would have realized like, wow, this stuff never goes bad.
Oh yeah, and like fermenting and what's the other one? Pickling. Fermenting and pickling are the two major ways to keep food very healthy. It's actually quite a bit healthier for you after fermentation and after pickling. But before refrigeration, that is how you kept food without
that and salting were the two ways.
Yeah, curing.
Yeah, curing, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I have
civilization.
9,500 BC is the current,
estimated,
like, basically like
anthropological,
the first accepted date of beer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder who fermented stuff and first realized that it wouldn't kill you if you consumed it. You know, because like if you had never heard of fermentation and you drank beer, you're like, oh my, I probably shouldn't put this in my body. It's like, whoa, I feel a certain way now. Like, oh, this is poison.
What's happening? I will call it drunk.
Right. But who did that? And especially with food, and then found out like, no, this is actually great.
The assumption is some sort of bee colony in a log, and then it rained, and yeast in the air got in there and fermented it, and someone came along.
Honey wine kind?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's the assumption.
Wow.
But, I mean...
No, who knows? But still, that's...
Yeah, but there's a lot of potential out there, because you have with all your psychoactive plants, you know, you have all of the stuff of like, how the hell did we figure that out? And there's a lot of potential for like what we call plant teachers. You know, they would have been like, you've been really high on something you just ate, and it was like, hey, you want to see another cool trick? If you put these two things together. Yeah. And so there is a potential for like this transfer of knowledge from outside of what would be considered.
I really buy that. I mean, that's just me. I really buy that, though. Also, I think that for anyone who's experimented with psychoactive substances of that kind, especially the very natural ones, you do get a sense of being able to commune with the things around you. So
yeah, you get like, you're like, I feel like that plant is sad. That's a weird thing to think. Yeah. And everyone's like, well, that's not possible. But
it's totally possible. Science has shown it's totally possible.
Yeah, you can totally measure like neurological response, so to speak, of a plant.
Yeah, if you yell at a plant, it has an effect on it.
Yeah, a measurable effect.
That's crazy.
Let's do a random fact. Amsterdam pays alcoholics and beer to clean its streets.
What?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's good or bad the more I think about it. So like first off, how do they determine if you're an alcoholic?
I don't know. This was like literally just a list of facts, and I Googled some of them because I was like, what? But that one I did not like go dig into because like, do you have to be an alcoholic?
Yeah, they probably just give you beer to clean the streets.
Yeah, that's what I'm
and
thinking.
you're probably an alcoholic.
And everyone just assumes that like if you're gonna go work for beer only, you're probably an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So, or there's just that one guy who like just gets off on hanging out with really weird alcoholic people, so he's there but not really for the beer.
Right. Or he just gets it and gives it to people.
Yeah.
Encourages their vice.
What did you do last night? Well, I cleaned streets for beer. Oh, you're an alcoholic? Why does everyone keep saying that?
I don't even drink. No, but I gave the beer to alcoholics.
The world record for chugging beer is held by Steven Petrosino.
Okay.
33 ounces in 1.3 seconds.
33 ounces. How much is that for our listening audience? Like this is a cup. How many?
Just
ounces
short
do
of
you
3 beers. Just short.
Whoa. In 1.3 seconds?
1.3 seconds.
How?
I don't know. Very wide throat. Makes me wonder what his day job was.
Just like a gullet.
That was in 1977.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No one's broken it since then?
Apparently not.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because that was in a list too, and I was like, really? I feel like, but dude, that's impressive. 1.3 seconds for 3 beers.
Yeah. 1.3 seconds is a little bit longer than you think it is, too.
That's also true.
Yeah, but still, that's a lot.
I feel like that would be maybe that's probably like the speed of pouring a beer, really. You know,
Yeah,
otherwise
that's
you'd have to
about
like
right.
force feed like some sort of contraption that just shoves beer into
He's just
you.
good enough to like open his throat and just literally pour a pitcher of beer down it.
Yeah, have you ever seen someone who can do that? I've seen a couple people.
People,
like,
well, that's how you like swallow swords and stuff.
yeah.
So it's possible.
Swords.
Tasty.
That's really coming back up.
Oh my.
Let's see, where were we? Ale versus lager. Oh yeah, so interesting beer stuff. One of the first. It's definitely not the first Some people have argued that it was the first like legislation regarding alcoholic beverages, which is the German purity laws, also known as the Reinheitsgebot.
Your German's not great.
No, my penmanship is even worse.
Oh wow. What a combo.
But anyway, in the 1800s, Belgium made some laws about what beer is, and it was very restrictive. It was just malts or just barley, yeast, water, and hops. So if you were outside of that, you weren't a beer. So like a fruit beer is then alembic, you know. So like there's a name for basically everything, but it's not a beer if it's not using anything but barley. And there's some conjecture about why that may or may not have happened, and even some interesting like conspiracy theory about an industry not wanting something to happen. But there's pretty good evidence to suggest that they were worried about beer soaking up all of the wheat for bread use, and so they made this law that like beer cannot use wheat because we need bread. We don't want like the drinkers like fucking up everybody else's day.
Stop using our grains.
Yeah. So, but anything else that's if you're and that's basically accepted here.
Killed the shit out of that fly.
Jesus Christ! I'm glad we got that on camera.
You saw it. Proof is here. That was gross.
Yeah.
That's all right. And I don't have anything to clean up with. It's okay.
But now a beer is attempted to be like a cereal grain. It doesn't have to be just barley. It can be wheat or whatever. But it's yeast and hops and what am I missing? Hops, yeast, barley, water. Right. So
you do need water.
Yeah. So and anything else outside of that would be a malted beverage.
Yeah.
So and that's people are always like, oh, would you like a beer? And they go to hand me a beer, and I'll be like, that's a malted beverage, because most beer, especially the Budweisers, Coors, all that stuff, those aren't beer. And the big thing there is that you have this thing that's being sold literally all over the world. And it's such a big thing that your ingredients are coming from all over the world, right? And any sort of ingredient you're going to get is going to be subject to seasonal changes, regional changes, you know, and like wine is sold via region, and certain regions, the weather supports grapes. And just random factoid, the best kind of grape is something that you get a lot of rain early in the season to produce a nice big juicy grape, and then the rain just drops off and they start to shrivel up, and so you're leaving more sugar in the grape but less water, and that's what a good wine is a grape that has shrunk a bit due to lack of rain. So like all of your good wine producing areas are places that don't have a lot of rain late in the grape growing season. But anyway, so
oh my fancy. Yes.
That's pinky in the air for those of you who are listening. So we're fancy. But anyway, so if you're this big beer producer, you want something that tastes the same every time. Budweiser is supposed to taste the same every time.
That's your brand.
And you can't do that without lots and lots of chemicals, basically. So
Yeah.
Budweiser, Coors, all these guys, it's not beer because of all this other stuff they're adding to make it taste the same all the
Ew.
time.
It's probably not good for you either.
No, not really. I mean, and that's the thing is those are very stripped down versions of beers as well. Like a real beer has lots and lots of nutrition. And in fact, the less filtered it is, the more yeast you're getting. That's way good for you.
Yeah. Liquid bread.
Yeah, exactly. It is really liquid bread. And even in a way better. Well, I don't know. It depends on the sugar, I was going to say. But honestly, and there's quite a bit you leave some of that stuff in there, there's quite a bit of fiber. Because whenever you're eating sugar, you should be eating fiber because that's how your liver processes alcohol
Yep.
and sugar.
And that's also how you get diabetes.
Yeah. By not having, you have like everything in, that's one of the most, that's one of those things that like science, nature, medicine and stuff, everyone's like, oh, this does this. And it's actually like,
No, it's
these
always
5 things do this.
An imbalance of them causes these actual
Yeah.
diseases and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of crazy partnerships, as you'd see in nature at every level. So
Yep.
inside your body is no different. What were we talking about?
I don't know. I feel really bad for this fly.
Oh, we were talking about big beers being malted beverages and not actually beer
Yeah.
because they want to produce something that tastes the same every corner of the world, and so they have to have a very different kind of recipe.
Yeah.
So I don't call it beer.
Because it's not.
Which just like when somebody comes to me and is like, "Hey, you want to try this McDonald's cheeseburger?"
And you're like, that's not a burger.
And
that's
they're like,
soy.
"It's really good." I'm like, "It's not good. It's tasty."
Ugh.
You
Oh,
know?
God.
Because it's good would suggest some sort of quality, which isn't there, but it does have the quality of enticing your tongue.
Of tastiness.
Yeah.
It does have the chemicals of taste.
Yeah. So a Budweiser is tasty. It is not good. And now
Yeah,
I'd even argue it's probably not that tasty.
I was with a vegan the other day who likes to eat at Jack in the Box, and he ordered a burger. And I was like, well, you can't eat a burger. He's like, oh, I can. I was like, why? And he said, it's soy. It's 100% soy.
Really?
Yep.
I mean, I knew they were really high.
No,
I know,
the Jack in the Box
Taco Bell got in trouble
burgers
for
are
that.
100% soy.
Really?
Yeah. Soy byproduct. Even worse.
Gross.
Yeah, who knows? What is that?
Didn't
What
we
is
didn't we
soy
eat Jack in the
byproduct?
Box on the way to Burning Man?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I
That's
had-
wh- But Mihai texted me yesterday, and he's like, the McDonald's in Broomfield or whatever is like doing the new Szechuan sauce thanks to Rick and Morty,
Well, no one got it.
and no one did.
No, it's a big people at McDonald's getting sued by various individuals in a class action lawsuit for Szechuan sauce.
Wait, so they said they were going to release it and they didn't. Is that what's going on?
Only like 20 locations out of like the 3,000 that were supposed to do it actually got out Szechuan sauce or something like that.
So the people lined it because he sent me a picture of a line around the block.
Apparently
and
nobody
that
got
did not
any.
happen. Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Also-
he texted me this stuff. He's like, "Oh, I'm going. You want to go?" And I didn't text him anything. And then he sent me a picture of this line around the block, and I just texted him, "Gross."
Yeah,
Yeah. It's just. I mean, that's just going to be flavored soybean oil anyway.
it is. I mean, yeah. It's also just crazy again. Throwback to what we were saying earlier that a popular event has a huge impact on, policy and the way we do things. I guess that's not a policy example, but it's a way that we immediately take action based on something that's popular happening.
And honestly, like that's
Gross, though.
that kind of thing. Like watching Rick and Morty and them doing this thing with Szechuan sauce and then this like public upheaval around the Szechuan sauce, like that doesn't make me want Szechuan sauce. That makes me think you're a fucking fool,
Yeah.
which is what something Rick would set out to show you.
Yeah.
Fucking retards.
Yeah.
Don't eat that shit.
Don't eat that shit.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So let's do Colorado beer.
Sure. We
So-
love our beer here.
Yeah, damn straight we do. God damn it. The estimated impact on the economy is $1.7 billion.
What does that mean?
That's
impact on the
2016.
economy?
So that's like that.
GDP kind of
So
thing?
that's everyone who has a job, everyone who buys the beer, the liquor store guy who
Selling it.
like 30% of the liquor store's revenue is beer,
Yep.
and everyone who comes for beer tourism, that kind of thing. Actual sales were 882 million.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
and that's 2016.
And we have Coors here, so that's got to be a fair percentage of that, right?
What?
Coors.
Oh,
'Cause
well,
they're giant.
Budweiser has a plant in Fort Collins too. So,
Jesus.
but we're center of the country, so distribution-wise, that's why like most of the magazines in the country are printed in Colorado.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a like.
Dude,
a
Denver is going to
ton.
be the shit in 5 years.
Yeah,
like,
like kind of is.
Well, yeah, it is already.
In a way.
But when they're talking about that new Amazon building that may or may not come here,
That would.
I
be
think it's going
interesting.
Because your Amazon, like distribution is your thing.
I mean, supposedly the rest of the New World Order is here, so why would Jeff Bezos be any different?
Right, yeah. Come join us, Jeff. Come join us. We'll let you into the reptile exhibit down at the bottom of the museum.
We all have trouble breathing up here.
I've actually been in the modern museum.
In the what museum?
Or not the museum, the airport. I don't know why I said that.
You've been in the airport.
The bottom part.
Oh, there's a bottom part?
Yeah. It's just a bunch of broken shit.
Oh, nice.
But I don't know, maybe there was hidden conspiracy shit that I couldn't see.
Well, supposedly there's like this door. I've seen a picture of a door and everyone's like, that's the door.
That's the door.
The big thing about the airport is that the amount of concrete listed on paper is far more concrete than you can see out there, like far more.
Oh yeah. Well, also,
But that could have just been,
military,
but that could have just been like someone being like, just triple that number, and then they just pocket the money.
which they do
But
all the time.
But who knows? It's possible that there's some crazy shit over there. There's enough concrete at DIA to circle the world 4 times. So like a 2-lane highway around the world 4 times.
Holy fuck, that's a lot of concrete.
Or, an 8-lane highway once.
Or a 1-lane highway. How many
16 times.
16 times. Thank you.
That sale, $882 million in sales in 2016. That's up 48% from the previous 2 years. And
That's
is
a
crazy.
lot.
Yeah. I've been in Colorado the whole time. And there was something like 82 breweries in Colorado when this all got started. And as of 2016, where'd it go? Oh, maybe I didn't write that down. Anyway, there was 44 new breweries in this year. That was in 2016. The number slated to be built 2017 was 44. I don't know if that happened, but sure it was close.
Are they new breweries, like totally new beer companies, or just new places where they make the same shit?
I would imagine, I don't know that specifically, but based on what I've
if you're a
seen,
guess?
most of it was new breweries.
Oh, good.
I don't know of any I know of a couple big upgrades. So, craft beer is 26% of Colorado beer and 12% of national.
What makes craft beer?
Ooh,
What is that?
We're gonna get into that.
Okay.
That's actually a really interesting subject, which I didn't know until I got into researching for the podcast.
Nice. We appreciate that you do that research.
Let's do a couple random more beer facts, and then we'll get into what is craft beer.
Ooh. Stay tuned.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yes.
Nothing. Which is good, because that's what I'm explaining.
Good.
The strongest beer in the world is 67.5%.
Wow.
It is from a brewery company called Brewmeisters, and the name of the beer is Snake Venom.
Yeah, yeah, that was a trivia question.
You had that one too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Snake venom.
According to Patrick McGovern, the University of Pennsylvania, I hope that's right because I think it's just Govern, at the University of Pennsylvania, workers on the Giza Plateau. And this was quoted as saying the people who built the pyramids, but I contend that those were not the people who built the pyramids. They were the ones who were revamping them. But anyway, they received 4 liters of beer per day, which very nutritious and sanitary, which we talked about that earlier.
Great idea.
Very good potential that they were like, give them more beer, they don't die as much.
Yeah.
Which is a really interesting point too, because it was always assumed that Giza Plateau was built with slaves, and then they found so much, like the kitchens were so big, and the amount of bones and the amount of animals, and obviously the amount of matter being put through these kitchens. These were very well-fed people, and they're like, they were so well-fed, we have a hard time believing they were slaves. So, and I mean, come on, dude. How slaved could you be if you're getting 4 liters of beer per day?
You'd have to ask the average American.
What do we drink? Well, anyway, the Czech Republic is the largest consumer per capita of beer at 40 gallons per year per person.
Okay.
So.
It would be interesting to see if the amount of beer that we consumed was the same as Egyptian slaves, because that would just be rich.
But they weren't slaves.
Right.
Supposedly.
You'd say the same thing of the average American.
But I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, if you were getting 4 liters of beer per day, you probably could be a slave and you might not have noticed. Is somebody whipping me right now? This is some good-ass beer, bro.
You don't need to get whipped to be a slave. You just have to get fed well and move blocks.
I know, but I went to like that imagery.
I like that, yeah.
It invokes the most amount of emotion. Emotion.
And maybe you liked it. Maybe you're like, yes.
Beer reduces the risk of kidney stones by 40%.
Yeah, I could see that because it thins your blood. So
I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in beer, so I'd imagine that
yeah, there's probably some like microbiome stuff that it does for you that's really positive too.
Well, and that's a buildup of calcium, which would probably be because you're lacking the component to calcium. I know the absorption of calcium comes through magnesium. So I don't know if they'd be like, there's magnesium in beer, and then all that calcium that was kind of stacking up can then get used. But either way,
Well, I know your body can create some by itself too, so it might be that like a healthier microbiome creates or balances
that's a good
magnesium.
theory too.
Yeah.
I like that.
Who knows?
Let's stop this podcast and go test that. We'll see you guys in 5 years, and we need $1 million in funding, by the way.
Someone's probably done that study.
Commercials in the U.S. cannot show you consuming beer. You'll
Yeah,
never
I've
see
noticed
anybody
that.
drinking that, which I don't think I'd ever thought about.
I've noticed that because you never see anyone because you think like that's like the golden beer, but never can anyone consume it. Yeah.
Have you?
I wonder why. Like, what's the theory, the moral behind that?
I don't know. That kind of sounds like that would come from the churchies when all things got started.
Yeah, yeah. But like when tobacco was on TV, you could smoke the tobacco, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Maybe you couldn't. That'd be an interesting thing to look up. Anyway,
Tobacco didn't have the like religious fervor against it, so I'm just gonna assume that it was a religious thing.
yeah, maybe.
Like, okay, we get it. People like to drink, but don't show it. You know, one of those things. Let's see. I did that one. Let's go back to craft beer.
Oh yeah, tell us what is craft beer.
So this is really interesting. I think that was actually a separate page. The notes. Wait a minute, something's going on.
Oh my goodness,
Right?
Samson,
Right?
what's going on here? Expert note taker, fucking up. Hey, have you used this
there we
book
go.
for other things other than Nothing Explained notes?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, I was gonna say that's a lot of pages to have taken up noting.
That's a sketch from a sign I built. I'm actually building a sign right now. I don't remember what that is. Let's see if there's a decent sketch in here. This is terrible podcasting, by the way, because the vast majority, if you're listening to this, you can't see anything.
That's all right.
But it's gotten really wordy
he's
since I started
flipping
doing the
through his
podcast.
notebook. You can hear the pages turning, so
I don't remember what that
it
is.
can be in their mind.
Anyway, so this last year, the Brewers Guild, which is there's a National Brewers Association, then Colorado has a Brewers Guild, right? And the National Brewers Association defined craft beer for the first time this year in order to eliminate large breweries.
Okay.
So craft beer is defined as. See, now it's gone again.
God damn it, Samson. God damn it.
I wonder if I didn't write it. No, because I
Do
underlined
you
it.
not remember?
Let's go back.
You can't remember.
Craft. There we go.
There we go.
So, it has to be small, which is 6 million barrels or less.
Like the brewery has to be small.
Yep.
Okay.
And then it has to be independent, meaning that only up to 25% of the company can be owned by a large alcohol conglomerate kind of entity.
Okay.
And it has to be traditional, meaning that you are pushing the craft of beer brewing you are trying new things. You're not putting out a product that would arguably not be beer, so.
Right. Malted beverage.
Yeah, the idea is that you are taking the science of brewing to the next level, or at least participating in it you are really making beer. Whereas
You're like, our beer is an art, man. Your beer is a mass production.
yeah, whereas
fabrication,
you could
man.
come into the industry and you could just be like, well, here's $1 million, start your brewery, here's your recipes, don't ever change anything.
That's not
So,
craft beer.
Yeah, so craft is like crafting,
Well, that makes
we're
sense.
experimenting with
yeah.
recipes.
Like, yeah, most of the craft beer people I think of have like several different unique types of beer, and that's what makes them
Yeah.
successful. So that's cool.
Yeah, and so this year is the first year that they defined craft beer, and they made a little sticker. It's an upside down bottle, and your brewery is certified as a craft brewery. So and
Certified craft
I'm
brewery.
pretty sure that those things will start showing up on labels pretty soon. So you
Yeah.
can go into the liquor store and be like, oh, it's a craft brewery, and you'll notice that Goose Island will not have the sticker because that is a Budweiser's attempt to sneak into the market as a craft beer without actually being craft. And all of those people got eliminated from the Great American Beer Fest this year.
Fuck them. Yeah.
Yeah, right? I'm really
Way
stoked
to
on
go. Way to go, Great American Brew Fest.
So I figured that out a day or
Fest.
two ago before I was going, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And today in my research, I found out that in the middle of 2016, 14 breweries split from the Craft Beer Guild, the organizing entity that does all of the lobbying, legislation writing, and all this stuff that's trying to figure out try and work with the Colorado legislature as to how to deal with beer and craft beer in general. And they split off, which was basically in response to the incoming venture capitalist aspects, like Budweiser,
Yeah.
buying up Goose Island, and then running around trying to pretend like they were a craft beer brand.
Hey, that's the most American thing you can do.
And I was right when Budweiser bought Goose Island. I was running a bar at the time, and so the Budweiser reps came to me and they're like, "Oh, check out our new beer," and I was like, "Something doesn't smell right, bro."
Yeah.
And I thought the Budweiser thing was a very interesting thing because Budweiser tried to basically fight the craft beer thing.
How?
I don't know have any specifics, but rather than embrace it, they were like, "Oh, you know, this is all their boardroom meetings were all basically a bunch of old timer dudes being like, this is a fad, it's gonna go away, we should just ignore it." And Coors, on the other hand, who already had trucks all over the nation and Colorado running around distributing all of this beer, were like, well, hey, we could distribute your beer for you and we'll take a cut, right on, like, works out great. And so I could go to the Coors guy and I'd be like, let's talk beer, I want to get a new beer on. And he'd have like a selection of like 120 possible beers.
Wow.
And then the Budweiser guy would come in and he'd be like, I have 8.
Wow.
Yeah, and like Budweiser just waited forever. And then when they were so far behind the ball, they're like, oh my God, we're getting fucked. We need to figure out what to do about all this. So they started buying up craft breweries and like playing the angle. Rather than being a craft brewery, they're pretending to be a craft brewery, and they bought Breckenridge Brewery.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that created all this infighting at the Craft Beer Guild here in Colorado because they just basically they weren't prepared for that. They didn't see that kind of thing happening.
Yeah.
And the response they had as a group was dissatisfying. And the interesting thing is those 14 breweries that split, most of those is like the biggest breweries and original breweries. Great Divide, Left Hand, Odell, Oscar Blues.
I was hoping it would be
and
the
Mountain Sun,
opposite.
who I used to work for, which is really interesting. I should call the owner. I know.
So
those
what
guys
does that
and kinda talk
spell?
to them about that.
What does that spell for the future of craft beer?
So they created their own.
Oh, there's a new
guild now.
Good.
So Colorado is the only state in the union that has 2 legislative entities representing the craft beer industry.
Interesting.
Which makes sense too. I mean, we have pretty much more craft, maybe California, but we've got one of the biggest craft beer places.
Yeah.
We're beer nerds here. God damn it, we're awesome. The study of beer is called zithology. Z-Y-T-H-O-L-O-G-Y.
That's a curious one. Didn't know that.
I'm trying to remember what the other word. There's a Z word that comes with like brewing beer. Oh my God, I'm so bad at this. Let's do another statistic or something.
Sure. Throw some
The most
stats
expensive
at us.
bottle of beer is Belgian. It's called Viel Bon Secure. It's $1,000 a bottle.
Well, for one bottle of beer?
Yep.
Fucking rich people.
I
bet
tried. They usually they turn me down.
Bet you it tastes fucking normal as fuck.
The Viking religious myth, the idea of Valhalla, has unlimited beer.
That's tight.
Right?
Yeah.
Much better than virgins, if you ask me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't really be throwing myself in any sort of situation that was promising me virgins. Have you ever slept with a virgin? It's not really a good thing to do.
Probably not the greatest.
I mean, I'm all down to help. Teacher, whatever. That's cool. But, as far as personal satisfaction go,
Yeah.
sleeping with a virgin isn't really about me. It's all about you.
You'd rank
Or it should be. That's a pro tip. If you're sleeping with a virgin, it's about the virgin. It has nothing to do with you.
That's true.
Be helpful.
Unless you're both virgins.
Teach.
In which case it can...
Fumble in the dark. Love it.
Or you are
More
also
power
the
to you.
virgin, but they are not, in which case it is about you. And also
Yeah,
the virgin.
if you're the virgin, it's about you. And if you're with a partner and you're losing your virginity and at some point it occurs to you that it's not all about you, then you need to find a new partner. Yeah. Apparently in ancient Babylonia, supposedly if you brewed a bad batch of beer, you were drowned in it.
Ha! In the beer.
Yeah. It was so revered and so important.
Good.
Xenosilicophobia, the fear of an empty glass,
Wow.
right?
I just call it being an alcoholic. But that's, that's
No. Why are you shaking? I'm afraid of my empty beer glass. In July 2010, a shipwreck was found in the Baltic Sea that yielded 145 bottles of alcoholic beverages dated from between 1800 and 1830. 5 of those turned out to be beer, and that is the oldest drinkable beer ever recovered.
Nice.
And 4 beer experts, like tasting experts, tasted it.
Right.
They said it tasted old.
Is that a joke or is that really what they said?
That's really what they said.
Wow.
What do you do? And
How does it taste?
I read like
Old.
2 different articles, and everyone's like, as you'd expect. But it's really cold water, which is
Yeah.
why that was able to happen. So
Oh, that's tight. So
that is
super refrigerated.
That's super tight. 200-year-old beer.
Yeah, it's how rare to be a human being to say you've tried that. Like, yes, I was the taster of that.
Yeah. Brewing was traditionally a woman's occupation because it was more of the hunter. It was more of the gatherer than the hunter. So men were out hunting. Women were like grabbing berries and fermenting them.
and shit. Yeah, totally.
Give me a beer, woman. And she was all like, "This is gonna take forever. I don't have a refrigerator. I can't just go walk to the refrigerator, dude. Have some patience."
Yeah.
I read a thing that there was like a professional beer brewer called a brewster, and it was a female occupation, and you had to be beautiful. But I just read that as like, oh, this is like a fact, and it wasn't, no linking or anything, no sourcing, and so I Googled it and I couldn't back that up. But I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, how this tastes like it was made by a beautiful woman.
I mean, that's not uncommon in just like mythological terms.
Yeah, and there was a goddess of beer basically, and she was of course beautiful. So I guess you probably wouldn't be like really respecting the goddess.
That's the idea.
If you did not have a goddess brewing your beer. I like the idea, honestly. What could go wrong? Yeah, nothing. See,
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Oktoberfest is the largest beer event in the world in Munich, Germany. 6 million people show up.
Wow.
Right? Where do you park?
Probably don't.
Yeah, you don't.
No. And because then also you might be drinking and driving.
That's true. As soon as you start drinking, hopefully your car is already parked.
Yeah.
Especially given that the Autobahn is right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. 50 million people are drunk right now.
Right now.
Yeah, at all times.
Like drunk?
Yeah, I don't know what the definition of drunk is according to this statistic, but supposedly like 0.7% of the world population is drunk right now.
Huh. That makes sense.
That's pretty good though. I think if someone had told me to guess that number, I don't think I would have shot a little bit higher.
Yeah, I would say higher too, but
70 and 1,000.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Which would be like 55 of my Facebook friends.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well, 55% of my Facebook friends would have gotten drunk in one day.
Yeah.
That's kind of a tough statistic. Do you know that hops and marijuana are like from the same plant family?
I do know
They're
that.
cousins.
Mm-hmm.
You can.
They look very similar too.
You can splice a hop plant onto a marijuana plant, and the hop will start producing THC resin.
Really?
Yeah.
So they're that genetically similar.
Yeah.
Oh. What about beer? Can you make marijuana beer?
Yeah, because THC is alcohol soluble. So you're better off with a stronger batch.
Yeah.
But I've been to a party with a very strong stout that had both weed and mushrooms in it.
Wow.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't go to that party. The next year they were like, things got a little bit weird, so we
don't have that.
The company's
anymore.
gotten kind of big, so we're going to skip out on the dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
But that would have been quite the scene. What time is it?
Nearly over.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That's good because I'm running out of stuff to say.
That's okay. You
Holy
did a really
crap,
good
it's
job.
3 o'clock.
Yeah, how about that?
I'm amazing.
Well done.
And
I enjoyed it. I learned a lot about beer. I am. I don't drink, but it's.
What beer did you drink when you drank? Did you have a favorite?
Yeah, they're kind of embarrassing.
Oh, nice.
Not embarrassing, but I really liked Corona.
Well, that's a go-to.
It's not
When you
very good
Google beer, it's the first picture that shows up on the Wikipedia page.
Yeah, it's not
and I'm kind of like,
surprising.
you fucking fuckers. That's a
Yeah.
malted beverage, like I do.
Yeah, they also probably paid for that. But no, I liked. I always liked lighter beers. I like pilsners, like genuine pilsners. I remember.
Oh, I do. That reminds me.
I always really liked cheap beer though. Something about good cheap beer was always something I liked.
Good, cheap beer. I used to not be able to do. I was like, no, absolutely not. And nowadays, in my old age, I'm like, I'm okay with the occasional PBR.
Yeah.
I'll drink a Coors. Speaking of which, the Coors Original isn't actually Coors Original. It's called Banquet because it was the fancy beer that Coors used to brew for special occasions when they got the company together for a party. It was not sold commercially.
It's in-house beer.
And then at some point, somebody took over and they're like, we can't be giving people good beer, and they shelved the recipe. And then a couple years later, they were like, maybe we should make this beer for the public, and that's what Banquet is. So
There's probably a PR guy.
yeah,
It's like, remember that Banquet beer that we shelved? Can we just sell that and make a story out of it? Like, oh
Yes.
my God.
the marketing guy was like, what's that thing?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that's Banquet. Don't forget about that. And he's like, I don't think we should.
Mm-hmm.
So I did go to Brewfest last night, and for those of you who don't know, a large percentage of the craft brew industry shows up in Denver and brings between 3 and 5, 8 beers a piece. And the convention center room is full, and you have a 5-hour opportunity to try beers. And I estimate that even at the breakneck speed, you would be able to try like maybe 3% of all the beer that's there. So
A lot of beer.
it's incredible. I highly recommend you go. Tickets are extremely hard to find. I have somehow managed to go 6 times now, and I've never paid for it. So
Good for you.
the beer industry has paid me back in spades.
Good. Well, I'm sure you helped them out.
We'll finish up right here. I did try a couple of beers, and the notes. I was kind of being more social than like really beer nerdy, so I didn't take a lot of notes and I didn't seek out anything. But a couple of the big notables: otra vez, which is Spanish for one more time.
Yep.
Which I think is a session beer because it was like very good beer. It's from Sierra Nevada. I don't know if I said that, but we stopped by the Sierra Nevada booth, and they had this really cool, the beer cars that you drive, like the mobile bars.
Yeah.
They had one, but it was only like maybe 6 people and a driver, and it was like all steampunked out. It was beautiful.
That's tight.
I took a couple pictures of it because I was like, this is beautiful. This is the kind of thing I want to do.
Gotta love art cars.
Yeah. Elvis juice from the brewery called Brewdog.
Nice.
I just randomly, I was like, I don't know, give me the Elvis juice. And I walk away and I'm like, take a sip, and I'm like, whoa, that was lucky.
Yeah.
So that was really good. I'm going to track that one down. And then this is very interesting. So we're going to finish on this little point. So Dogfish Head is one of the more kind of like revolutionary breweries, and it's revolutionary in their like way back machine, and they're going back into looking like crazy herbal beers, and they're experimenting with recipes, and they do all kinds of stuff that like the average brewery is definitely not doing. They're pushing the limits of brewing. In a lot of ways, they are going back to a lot of what been like very traditional kind of crazy aspects of brewing, but they have a beer called Chicha. And it is made with a blue corn, which is chewed up by people, and then you chew it up in your mouth, and then I think that there's a little time limit on how much chewing you do, and then you press it into a little cake at the roof of your mouth to get as much of the juice out as possible, and then you place your little puck that you've just created in your mouth of chewed up corn onto some sort of sheet tray, and then you either put it in the sun or you put it in a kind of a warm place to get it to like the enzymes in your saliva start breaking the corn down. And the thing about the sugars in corn are too complex for yeast to eat.
Really?
But the enzymatic process of your spit in your mouth starts breaking those sugars down into something that yeast can eat. And that's like a very traditional.
So then you ferment the cake.
Yeah, and then you throw that in the beer. So then right up on the board, it said the ingredients, and the last ingredients was saliva.
Nice.
And then it was like in parentheses, it's like, don't worry, we boil the crap, so don't freak out.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's a really traditional, very sacred form of sake making, which your local spiritual woman, the local goddess of the temple, which is usually like, there's a family that runs the temple, and the oldest daughter would become the like new figurehead, and she would chew up a bunch of rice and spit it in this ceremony that was very public, and then they would have a sacred place where they would store the little flask of sake, and then they would break it out for some sort of major ceremony. But it would sit for years or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, like using spit to break down complex sugars into simple sugars to then be fermented is a totally wild thing.
So what's that beer called?
Chicha.
Chicha, that's the chicha. Gotcha.
C-H-I-Ch-A.
Beautiful.
Like how in Spanish the letter CH is a letter. So it's actually C-H-I-C-H-A.
Okay.
All right, guys. I have clearly done a terrible job of explaining everything and a good job of explaining nothing. So
Nice.
That's the world of beer as it is here in Colorado. A little snapshot 2017. If you are a person out there who wants to do some home brewing and stuff, I highly recommend it. It's a really interesting process. So yada, 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 and all that stuff. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
My name's Samson. Ryan Fu came and helped me explain nothing as usual. Thank you very much, sir.
No problem.
We'll see you next week. I think looks like I'm gonna have Dave Scheingold in for a couple of songs. He's got an angel voice, and he's moving soon, so I got to do that before he gets out of town. So,
Well.
all right, guys. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Peace.
Big up to the Ghost House where we record.